This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in Florida introducing an acclaimed author of highly rated books about a near death experience that revealed the answers of all humanity to him. I'm here with Bill. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
Hi, Gary. Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure.
I'm going to start off a little bit. First of all, Bill, you're an author whose work is deeply informed by a profound near death experience that you had in 1994, which
Yes.
led you to your recent major book. Before this experience, was there a spiritual curiosity as a child growing up? Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Oh, there was a very spiritual curiosity. When I was a teenager, young teenager, my older brother Peter I was about 15. He was 30 years old. He was the one that was present all the time, so he brought me to the baseball games and all that. He took care of me, and I grew up with him. My dad was on the road for travel because he used to be president of one of the Teamsters unions in New York. He was president of United Parcel. So the basically my brother wound up passing away. One day he had a lot of pain in his stomach, and we brought him to the hospital. 4 days later, they told us he had cancer and he had 4 months to live. And he's a 30-year-old young man, physically fit at the time, and it just came out of nowhere. So that devastated me. So I got really close to God there. I remember my last year, 2 years after that, my last year in high school, or 3 years after that, my last project was at Art and Design, was to do a storyboard concept, like you're making a movie or a commercial. So the teacher, Mr. Hollingsworth, said, "What's your story going to be, Bill?" And I said, "Well, there's nothing better than the greatest story ever told." So I did the story of Jesus's life. And to show you how this works in sequence, just to give you an idea, I did 17 panels, and the paintings came out, wonderful, and that was great. But when I graduated then in the summer, 2 weeks later, I'm already working for Benton and Bowles in New York as a advertising commercial artist on the board, a young board man, putting ads together, working on CoverGirl ads. And I decide one day I'm going to move to Miami because I thought in my head, because my dad used to talk about it all the time like it was a big city. Well, at that time, years and years and years ago, Miami was a small city. Miami Beach was big, yes. But the city of Miami had 4 or 5 buildings on it, tall buildings. Now they have a half a New York skyscraper line, but it was quite different back then. So that brought me very close to Jesus. What happened is that over the radio, WNBC radio announces while I'm driving to work, this is 2, 3 weeks after I get the job, there's a brand new show coming out, Jesus Christ Superstar by Andrew Lloyd Webber. And we're having a contest for WABC to everybody, send in your cards, make up a card. If you're autistic, make a card up. So I ran to the lumberyard that night. I picked up 2 4x8 plywood boards, and it was supposed to be a card. So I thought I would make a real big presentation. I put hinges on it so it would open and close. And on the front of the boards, I did a painting of Jesus with his arms spread out like this, a burning town on top of a mountain in the background, with hundreds of people coming down the mountain with torches and holding up crosses and their canes, reaching out to Jesus at the bottom, holding up their arms. And Jesus stood, like I said, about 7 foot tall in the picture. Anyway, a month before the show was to open, I get a call from WABC Radio, said, "You took first place, Bill." I said, "In what?" Because there was 3 categories: biggest card, smallest card, and most artistic card. He said, "Most artistic card." I was ecstatic. So it was 250,000 contestants, by the way. But just to show you how things work in sequence, I mean, that was very, very strange because I was very close to God at the time, and it was within me. And, it just rolled right into that.
So, like you say, much more than just a curiosity.
Right.
You got face to face with God right there, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
It's strange. I was literally humming that song from Jesus Christ Superstar last night. I have
Well, you
no
really.
idea why, but I was actually humming that in my head. Before your near death experience, You
Yes.
had a very, really a professional life, including work as a paramedic and as an
Yes.
artist. How did
Yes.
your experience in emergency rescue, I mean, being on the front line of life and death, prepare you, or perhaps maybe even surprise you for your own journey into the afterlife?
Oh, well, that's easy because when I got down to Miami, there were no ad agencies. So there was an ad in the Miami Herald one day. They need to create paramedics, more paramedics for the city because they were so short. Everybody was retiring down in South Florida at the time. And they sent me to medical school. I went to Mount Sinai Medical School at night. I actually worked on the units with the paramedics during the day as an attendant. So I had on the job training as well all the way through. So that part was wonderful. And the way the experience, I had life and death in my hands every day, every single day. I did CPR over 500 times. I brought babies into the world. I delivered quite a few babies, but when we worked through the riots in Miami, that was hard. That was hard. I mean, we were getting shot at, our unit. You know, don't forget, these were the cocaine cowboy days. The riots were going on. Everything was happening. And I'll never forget the end of my exposure as a paramedic. I was working, doing CPR on a man probably about 65 years old in his living room. He just went down. His wife said he just went down, stopped breathing. He had no pulse when we got there. Nothing came up on with the cuff. So I started working him automatically. Next thing I know, I open my eyes. I'm in a rescue unit. I'm all attached. We were working, I think, 2 48 hours or 72 hours shift. It was because we didn't have enough units out there. And, you know, the guys were kept asking us to work over and over again. You know, you get a little 5 minute cat, 10 minute, 15-minute cat nap here and there. But I keeled over, passed over, you know, not eating right, right? Not sleeping. I'm on like probably the 50th hour of work. And I opened my eyes. I said to the paramedic, I said, "What happened?" He said, your partner said you were in the middle of doing CPR and you just keeled right over. You went down. I passed out again. I opened my eyes in St. Francis Hospital, and the priest is over me giving me last rites. I'll never forget this. And then it came to the point in my book where I talk about the PTSD. They have a name for it nowadays. They back then they just said, "Oh, we don't see this happening to men unless they come back from war," you know, that type of thing. So, but for me, it was like being in war almost every day on that, you know. So it affected my psyche a little bit,
Oh,
and
I
that's what
bet.
happened.
I
That's
bet.
what
And you're on the front lines right there. You understand what death is all about. I mean, it kind of seems it was a fascinating period leading
it
up to
was.
your experience, including a pivotal encounter with Howard Hughes's lawyer, that kind
Oh
of
my
charted a
gosh.
course for your life. Tell us
Yes.
about that journey. I mean, was it destiny or was it a series of seemingly unrelated choices that maybe prepared you for that life-changing night?
No, that night for people who read the book, that night became a physical prophecy, and on that specific night, a miracle happened. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. You know, if they want to find out about that, they could, you know, read the book. But a physical miracle happened that night. And he told me that I was going to, I'm talking to Howard Hughes' attorney now, Nigel Nottage. And he explained to me that I was going to be a merchant and travel the world. Don't forget that happened to me prior to me becoming a paramedic, you know, while I was going to school, right before that, that's when I met him. And I said, no way, I'm going to go back into advertising. I'm an artist. I'm a commercial artist. I'm not going to be a merchant. Well, after my PTSD, something happened where it just fell in my lap, basically. A business opportunity came to me. I said, why don't I try? You know, it's something different. It'll be a more relaxing life. True story. So I wound up doing 35 to 40 trade shows a year all over the country. I traveled the world. And these stories of adventure and intrigue, because he told me you're going to have adventure and intrigue in your life. I wound up in Thailand one time with my wife on a buying trip, and we were physically taken. I mean, it's all in the book. We were kidnapped. We were physically kidnapped. I was beaten with machine guns, all this stuff. And it was a miracle, the second miracle in my life, that I'm alive today on that. So that was quite an interesting part of the story. This is prior to the near-death experience by about 4 years, 5 years too. Well, it was the 1989 Olympics, I think, because I was in Korea, Hong Kong, and China and Thailand. So I was in those four places at the time. And like we got out with our lives, we were lucky. We got back to the hotel that night. I said to my wife, I said, get on the phone because I was still shaking. I was beaten, I had welts all over my back. And I said, get on the phone, see if you can get us out of here. Because I was afraid they were going to come after us. You know, again, I didn't know. They were trying to rob us, is what it was. When you landed in those days, they used to give you a declaration, what, used to say you had fruit, if you had a currency. And I did have currency because I was seeing one of the sterling silver manufacturers there in Thailand. I had currency on me, thousands of dollars, but I didn't have it in cash. I didn't say cash. It said currency. I put down how much it was. At the time, I believe it was up there in the 10 or 15, 20. I don't know exactly. I don't remember the exact amount I had left because I had spent money already in Hong Kong and Korea. But that's what happened. Someone must have got the information, and the whole thing sounded like an inside job, evidently. And like I said, we were very lucky to get out with our lives.
Wow. You
Yeah.
were, like you said, and you didn't plan on ever being a world merchant out there traveling, and
No,
yet it was predicted, and that's what happened. Before we get
exactly.
into the actual near death experience, explain that traumatic event for us that had you facing death and leaving this physical life as we know it.
Well, what happened was I was out in Tucson, Arizona. It's 1994 now. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, doing one of the biggest shows of the year for us. It's actually the biggest show in the world. The whole city becomes a show. To tell you real quick, the convention center is filled with vendors. You know how shows are, right? At convention halls, and all the ballrooms and the whole city is filled with vendors at the same time. So when we got there, people were coughing already. There was something going on. Every year we did the show, there's, something wrong because it's February. It's cold, flu season, everything, right? So every year, but this year, a killer virus was going on and bacterial combined. So when I physically passed, I think it was from the bacterial infection and a virus because they were feeding me antibiotics in my tubes. And as I asked them, I knew what they were doing over there because I used to hook up the IVs and stuff. So I said, what are you putting in the terminal? They said, we're putting on antibiotic because we don't know what this is. There was a lot of people going down sick from this. The day before it happened, I picked up a lady across the way from me. She fell to the ground. I ran over to her. My old paramedic skills kicked in. I picked her up, put her on my lap just to make sure she had a good airway and she was breathing properly. And she was breathing, and all I could do is wait for the paramedics. But when I picked her up, the heat out of her body, and I felt people with temperatures many, many times in my life, but she must have been drawing 105, 106. I remember them telling me I think my temperature was 104 or 5 when I went in to the hospital. That was that's the lead up. It was the fourth day that I got sick. On the next day, I went down to the show, and the people took a look at me and they said, Bill, you know, this time get yourself in the hospital. Well, what happened was that night, I figured I'd stay out that night because they gave me some antibiotics already and an inhaler to help me breathe. But I didn't know at the time I had another problem, internal problem that I didn't know about called sleep apnea. I'm still a young man. I was healthy. I felt good. I knew I snored a lot, but I had sleep apnea and my throat was out to here. That's how big my throat was. So that's the night that turned into a night of light and love. What happened?
That is the night. I mean, just leading up to that is
That's
quite a
just
story.
leading up to the NDE. Yes.
Many people, I mean, have profound spiritual experiences. What were the greatest challenges you faced in translating your unique experience into a narrative for readers here on Earth?
I didn't even speak about it till after I got to my own doctor at home. Because when I woke up in the hospital, they just told me you had an episode. All right. And I woke up, I'll never forget it. And I got back home. I had to make an appointment. So I made an appointment with my doctor, Emmanuel Vasquez. And I went in his office. I said, Dr. Vasquez, I have to talk to you. He says, do you need a physical? I says, yes, I believe so. He brought me in, gave me a physical. He said, let me give you a physical first. So he did the regular physical. He gave me, took my blood, listened to my heart, blood pressure, all that stuff. So he says, okay, let's go back to my office now and you can tell me what's going on. So I laid out the whole near-death experience story to him that I didn't get to you with yet. But I laid out the whole story to him. And after about, 45 minutes, because that's how long it actually takes to tell the story, the full story, he said, Bill, I want you to sit back and relax. What I'm positive you had, he says, because 7 of my patients told me the same exact story. A little different sequences, a little different ways of going about it, but they told him the same story. I had no idea at the time. I didn't know what a near-death experience was and never heard the name near-death experience in my life. I was a businessman. I didn't even think of those things. I was a young businessman. I didn't think of that. I had no idea about that. And that was extremely profound. So he brought me back in. He says, we have to go back into the examining room. I said, you just examined me. He says, no, we're going to do different exams. So he brings out the electrical cardiogram. He brings out something that's hooked up into my all plugs to put on my head, my brain. And he's taken, in the old days, they used to read the tape coming out of the machine, electrical cardiogram machine. And he's reading and he's reading, he's reading. He looks at me and he says, Bill, when did you have your heart attack? I said, Dr. Vasquez, you've been my doctor since I was a paramedic years ago, years ago. He says, I never had a heart attack. He said, Bill, that's the night you died. And that just shocked me. So went back into his office again, and he explained to me about some of these other patients and what happened to them and the physical story, how they were floating above their body, how they entered the gateway. Some of them, not all of them, some of them, because what happens nowadays, let's face it, they're not explaining this in school. There's something wrong. The reason why, because there's 10,000 NDEs a month that occur in the world today because of modern medical technology. 10,000. Yeah. So you multiply that by 12 months, you got 120,000 a year. Go 10 years, you got 1.1 million something NDEs. But they don't get the full experience because they bring them back right away with defibrillators. So they'll usually get to the part where they're hovering. That's why you hear different stories from people and how far, they've gotten and things in their NDE. That's why I'm considered one of the most profound NDE stories ever told. I'm the most viewed person on the internet. I think over the last year, I have not my podcast. I don't take any money for my stuff. I just give it. This is something I have to give to humanity. I tell the story and give it, but I imagine the podcasters are doing well. But I have over 5 million views on the podcast that I've done, and for NDEs, that was the most viewed last year podcast in the world. I did
I mean, it
several.
reminds me of the old movie back in the day, Flatliners, where these guys were trying to put themselves under for a certain amount of time, and they
Right.
experienced quite a bit. Your book, The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, is centered on this near-death experience. Can you
Yes.
describe that pivotal moment and what it was like to cross over into what you call the light of God?
Yes. It's called Crossing the Veil. And what happens is I physically remember leaving my body. A lot of near-death experiences recognize when they're out of the body, but I remember physically seeing myself leave my body. And now my total consciousness was floating above my body. I left my body through my eyes. I saw myself physically leave the body in this magnificent, magnificent glowing, the color of life, the color of green. If you take a fern in the springtime, you magnify that 100 times, and glowing, that's the color that I was floating in. And I remember floating physically above my body, looking down upon myself, not thinking too much about the body anymore. I'm feeling live. I'm feeling this love come over me like I've never felt before. I feel something that's wonderful. It's the most beautiful experience
Hmm.
I've ever had. So I'm looking at that body, and I remember saying, and that body has no life. When I said that body has no life, everything lit up from behind me. Now the light physically turned me. I remember physically turning, and now I'm facing this magnificent gateway of beautiful colors swirling, and it pulls me right in. And now I'm in this magnificent tunnel, and I'm moving faster and faster. And as I move, I'm feeling nothing but love and almost like I'm cradled. It was just a wonderful feeling, but I'm feeling like I'm moving at the speed of light. That's how fast the colors are whizzing by me. And I'll never forget my arrival, which I'll call heaven because I believe in God. I said, I'm home. I'm finally home. Thank God I'm home. I remember saying it over and over and over again. It was then I heard a soft whisper in my ear say, yes, Bill, you're home in the light of our Lord. And these are your family circle and friends. We have a spirit circle that follows us. We see our families again that has left in the past. And she says, Bill, my name is Antonia. I was responsible for bringing you home. That must have been the part where I said I felt cradled because remember when I said I felt cradled and moving at the speed of light? It was magnificent. And the love kept building and building. And she says, you have two other guardians. And now the story begins. I mean, where it goes to, a beam of light starts coming at me, and that beam of light turned into my brother Peter. And I'll never forget the embrace. The embrace was unbelievable. The love in the embrace was like we souls connected. It was magnificent. And then he explained. I remember the explanation from the both of we going for a life review. And I didn't know what a life review was, but the next thing we whisked off into this beautiful illuminated area. And now they start showing me my life from when I was a child and it's skimming through, and I'm seeing it in the physical now. You know, you're in the medical physical, the metaphysical, but now I'm physically seeing my physical life in the physical when I was a little boy. You know, my mom and dad, they also owned a bar and grill across the street from Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, where the Brooklyn Dodgers used to play. And they gave me, you know, when I was a little boy, they used to hand me money because they say take your friends to the movies and stuff like that. Not, we weren't rich by any means. We lived in a low level apartment, you know, not a lot of money. My dad was president of union, but back in those days they didn't make any money, not too much money. My mom's bar took in a little bit, so that's how she had a little extra. She always gave me a little extra to take care of my friends. Took them to the movies, they showed me all these things. And the amazing thing is, I'm seeing this thing and it's beautiful and it's better and better and better. They're showing me all the good I've ever did. They bring me right to the part when I was a paramedic and they start showing me the events of the paramedic. Now, you could take this part out. I'm going to cut it down for you because this is a long story. All right. But it gets really interesting. They show me a part when I'm a paramedic where we're on the way to our station, North Miami Beach. Our unit's driving up I-95 North. All of a sudden, the call comes over the radio, not to us, because we're not clocked in yet at the station. We're just on the way to the station. The call went, oh, our station was about 15 minutes from that spot. I said we're less than 2 miles away. I picked up the mic and say this is a 67F. I said we got a 2 minute or less ETA. It was much less. We were on the scene in probably a minute and a quarter. We get there, I see this young man running around frantically. And look at him, and he had a little blood on his face. So I picked up the medic bag, we're running over to him. And he says, no, my sister, just like that. And I'll never forget this. My sister, me and Daddy turned around to look at his sister's head was through the windshield. This is back in the day where people didn't wear a seatbelt. So it was easy for somebody to crash their head, especially if they were going at a high speed. So now we have to evaluate because we say that Danny and I said to each other, we can wait for the cutters to come, but she'll bleed to death. There's blood all over the hood and the top part of her I don't want to get too graphic, but the top part of her head is on the outside and the inside was on the inside. And so we looked at each other, says, she's still breathing. We got to get her out. And so I went on top of the hood of the car and I just gently handed that part over to Danny. And then he grabbed them and put gauze pads on her head. And then we transferred her to the stretcher and put her right in the ambulance. The young brother came and sat in back with me. I'm trying to put a bandage on her, but now her body starts to seize. Her body physically starts to seize. It's jumping up and down. I got the bandage on. I said, God help me. When I said, God help me this time, in real life, I said, God help me. But they showed me when I said, God help me, Peter's hand came in right on top of my hand, trying to put those bandages on her head. And I'll never forget, we arrived at Parkway General Hospital like a minute and a half later because it was that close. Everybody was ready for us. They wheeled her right into operating. And Danny and I were full of blood. And all I could think about the whole day was that, about this young girl. She might have been 17, 18 years old. That was it. And Danny kept on saying to me, the other units guys kept saying, Billy, stop bringing your work home with you. Stop it. And all I could do is think about this girl. I think about today, it gives me the chills. And I woke Danny up like an hour and a half before we're supposed to get up the next morning to return the unit back in, because now we're back on the slow time and back on just a 24-hour shift. And he says, time to go. Yeah, I said, Danny, go. By the time we got in the unit, I said, I already cleaned up the unit. I said, the time we got in the unit, he said, all right, let's get going. And I said, we got to go to Parkway General. He looked at me like I had three heads. He looked at me and turned around again. He said, Billy, she's dead. Because we thought went through her skull, you know? But what happened was we got to the hospital. I finally convinced him to go. And we got to the hospital. I told him what time it was, so we had plenty of time because it was way out of our way, about 8 miles one way, 8 miles the other way. Got in the hospital. One of the nurses we know in the emergency room says, you want to meet her? I said, where is she? He took her up to her room, and she's sitting up in bed. She's eating Jello with this big turban bandage on top of her head. And she was the luckiest. God blessed me that day. She was the luckiest girl in the world, because what happened was she was just scalped. And I saw the top of her forehead. So she was scalped in her hairline, and just the skin part. We thought it was in her skull, but it wasn't. But you couldn't tell because of all the blood. When you have a head injury, the head bleeds very much. And oh my gosh, the brother hears us. He was still sleeping. He's sleeping in the corner. The mother and father are asleep, and they start to wake up. The brother jumps up and yells, these are the men that saved your life. And the girl was smiling and ecstatic. I went over and hugged her. And I tell you, I still get the goosebumps thinking about it. And that was one of the things they showed me. All the good. But then they change it on you.
Yeah.
They switch it up on you, and then they show you the bad things you've done in life. And I'll go.
Showing you how it all comes together. Things that you were doing in your past, you were revealed all this information. Your book centers on the 9 principles of enlightenment that you were gifted.
Right.
If you could focus on one of these principles that you believe is the most immediately critical for people to apply in their lives today, which one would it be, and why so?
Intuition. We have angels with us throughout our lifetime. Our angels, that's my book has 3 angels in it. And one of my angels was my intuition. You know how they say that you have an angel sitting on your shoulder sometimes in life? All right. Well, we really do. We have angels watching over us throughout our whole life. And when we're in situations like I was in Thailand back in those days, it wasn't for a miracle that saved me. That angel saved me. That angel saved me. The wonderful thing about intuition, if we pay deep, close attention to our intuition, and I'm not talking about a thought here. I'm not talking about a thought. It has to be something that hits you in the gut and is wrong, or it's the right thing to do. And you have to follow that intuition. It's very important. And there's one other one that's extremely important. The choices that we make in life with the world has to be a little more kind and serve a little more and give a little more. And we have to stop with our selfishness, because that's how I wound up getting out of my life review when I pleaded to God to forgive me, because I had left my first wife 7 years after, and I didn't know the cause I paid. The cause, I mean, the hurt I caused back in those days. You know, when you're young and you're not thinking about yourself as much, but they showed me that pain. I became that pain. I became the physical pain. I remember screaming, please, God, forgive me, forgive me. And when I did that, and this is back in my life review, everything just, all that grayness dropped, and we were back in beautiful spirit form. And Antonia and Peter and Oren was their president at the time now. They said, look at yourself, Bill. And now I turned into looking like they did. Remember, I told you I was this free flowing mist where I see myself, but I'm basically in the mist. I'm part of the mist. They were these beautiful beams where they would stand and you could see them, who they were. It is magnificent. That part was just magnificent. Your
So you not only
question.
you felt that love, obviously, from that light, but you also experienced some pain that
Yeah,
was caused. I mean,
yeah,
that is a balance people don't think about. They only think of the love side and not understanding that
right.
we're responsible. There's consequences for our actions. You state the you state that these principles, if implemented, can change our world forever. What is
Right.
the first tangible change you would expect to see in society if a critical mass of people began living by the wisdom that you were given?
Well, the first thing that I believe that we have to do, we have to do something with technology is going to take away too many jobs in the world, physical jobs. Technology is good and we use it all for good. But my gosh, if we wind up having to go to something like a universal income, that'll be real tough on a lot of people. I seen this in what they call the Hall of Events in my book, where they showed me the past, they showed me the present, they showed me the future. In my first book that I wrote in 2002, that I have in the records in DC, you know, where you get it copyrighted. I didn't publish the book till 2012, that first book, but I explained about wearing jewelry or watches and or clothing with sensors in them that will measure people if they had a stroke, let be alerted automatically. So emergencies alerted automatically. If they have a heart attack, a stroke, it's reading their vital signs. And you know, paramedics are on the spot, you know, much faster that way. And they do have it today. We have the thing that the ladies, men wear with the emergency button. They push. Sometimes it looks like a piece of jewelry. You know, the life save thing they wear as a necklace. They wear it and they have it today. They have it in watches, Apple watches. What does the Apple Watch do? It measures your pulse. It measures your everything, all your vitals if you want. You know, so I've written this all down back in many years ago. They showed me events that led up to this too, and they saw events of the future now. And the events they showed me back then are physically happening now. So I've seen all the things that's happening over the last couple of years, and I want to tell everybody this one thing. We
Absolutely.
we are we have choices. My first book was called Choices: Messages of Love to Change the Outcome. We have choices that we have to make. We have to slow down a little bit. We have to breathe. There's got to be a little more kindness in the world. Look, nothing's ever going to be perfect. I understand that. But kindness and service is what leads us to eternity. Because on the other side, we never die. Your audience should know this. We never physically die. We go on and live as part of God's light in eternity as a collective. So we all in heaven, we all work together. It's sort of a little different there, but we still have individual thought. That's the beauty of it. And it's so advanced. It's so wonderful. God is with you all the time. You feel God's presence while you're there. So you always have that love in you.
very hard for people to comprehend when we're talking about. We see as death as being the end, something you want to avoid at all costs, and yet you're saying we're going to go on to an advanced type of life, really.
There's one other thing. Advanced type of life in a utopia, or we wind up like Mad Max. That's the truth. And that's the part where I have to get across to your audience. It's very important because that's how the whole event ends. They show me two possible scenarios. And these two scenarios, one was wonderful, where people will give in kindness, service was going on. You could see a life of happiness and working together. And I'm not talking about in heaven, I'm talking about in real world. And then they showed me a terrible part where things could be, we could have devastation if we make the wrong moves. It's not hard to make the right moves. If people follow these 9 principles that I have listed down here, they're very simplistic. There's nothing hard. There's choices. There's love. There's services. The base, the only one that's one connected to the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. That's the first one. I mean, the reasons they gave me were quite, a little different than what we have in the Bible. You know, they should not kill because we don't know what that person's great granddaughter could have done with her life. You know, so we don't have these. We it's hard to explain this part, but
We we
we
we
shouldn't be looking at
complicate
killing
things.
anybody.
We
Huh?
complicate things. We as humans, we complicate things. Like you say,
Yes.
it's not a perfect world of just kindness, but we're far from perfect. There's so
Right.
much improvements can be done. You described being taught by 3 guardian angels in the light of God. What was the nature of the conversation? And, or more so, what was it like to receive the answers of all this humanity from beings who emitted so much love and knowledge? What was that like?
That was the most beautiful experience in the world because at the end, when they told me I must return, it was from, I'll get to my 3 angels in a minute, but they showed me, one of the angels showed me this, they showed me so many things. They showed me the beginning of life. It's almost like I seen embryos in the clouds of babies. They showed me creation. They showed me devastation too, but more on the creation side because there's only love on the other side. But one of the beautiful little spirit approaches me and she says to me, "You must return." And this was after I had great experiences with my angels that I will tell you about. But she says, "You must return." And I begged and pleaded, "No, I'm home. I'm home now. I'm in the light of God. Don't send me back. Please don't send me back." And she says, "You must return." Prior to this, one of the angels showed me this beautiful number sequence that was beautiful, just waterfalls straight down of numbers flowing down and lighting up, lighting up, lighting up. The ones would light, the 8s would light, the 3s would light, the 9s would light, the 6s would light. These particular numbers, they meant something. I knew they meant something. I didn't know exactly what they meant then, but they did tell me one thing. They told me that I had something called a life path number for myself, and my number was 3. I had no idea what that meant. I have no idea. I didn't know what that meant until 4 or 5 years ago. I was just looking up. I said, why don't I just Google life path number? I Google life path numbers, and those whole stories come up about life path numbers. Well, when they told me, they says this is attributed to God and the Holy Trinity, the the
Hmm.
Holy Spirit and God, the 3 is always attributed to that. And then they told me that I had an alert. I had an alert sign, but I knew this one. This one I had my whole life. They said 6 6. When you see the number 6 6, that means some event is coming in your life. Now, it doesn't have to be bad. It could be a wonderful event, or it could be something bad. At the end, bring it back to the end with that beautiful little spirit. She's telling me for the 3rd time, she says, "Dad, I'm 6 of 6." Well, let me explain this part to you. I had my son my middle son, Billy, in my wife's belly when this happened to me in Tucson, Arizona, at home. She was going through morning sickness. So she couldn't come with me to that show because usually she worked with me all the time. She had a terrible morning sickness. She couldn't work. But the key is, this is the key. I had, when she said Dad, I thought she was talking about Billy because my wife was pregnant. So that's what I thought for years. But I am 6 of 6. It didn't make sense. In the year 2000, on the 6th month and the 6th day, I had a beautiful baby girl, and it wasn't planned either. There was no C-section, no anything. My little girl is in existence today. She's 25 years old, and
That
she's still my beautiful little angel.
that that gives me the chills just hearing those
Oh
numbers.
my
That's
gosh.
fantastic.
Yeah, I had to bring out that. But there were so many things that they taught me, and so many beautiful things, and the love. And we're all about love, and because we live on for eternity, like I said, in God's light. And these numbers, they mean a lot. I explained some of it in the book on the next story. I'm doing a movie now. The book was just chosen for a big event we just got finished with, ICVM Awards and the 53rd Storytellers. And
Um,
it was a beautiful
you're
conference we
you're
had.
going back to your first book. It was
Yes,
Choices, Messages of Love to Change the Outcome. How does
right.
that initial book differ from your most recent, would you say?
Okay, so the initial book was a very funny when I was starting to write it in the late 90s into I had it finished by probably 2001. When I was starting to write it, I was a Roman Catholic, and I didn't know much about. I knew about Jesus, but I didn't know about Christianity. I just knew about Roman, being a Roman Catholic. And that's what I knew about at the time. Now I would say that I was fully Christian, but back then I didn't. And the key fact about that was the part of being Roman Catholic at the time in the late 90s and the early 2000s was that I made the book more spiritual. Let's put it that way. The reason why I made it spiritual, because that's when that tragedies were going on with some of the priests, hurting some of the younger children. I don't even like to talk about it because it gets me ill. So it's not that I didn't leave God and Jesus out of it. I just talked about it as more of a spiritual thing. And the
Spiritual.
second book, the second
Yep.
book is the book with the real story, the whole story. The name of my book is The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light.
Yep.
And it's on all the platforms. Like I said, we have a movie script on it now, and it's up for a movie. I just showing it to some of the very big movie companies this last week. We had a seminar for a week going on with awards and everything. So it was a wonderful place to be to meet a lot of like-minded folk, people thinking.
Yep.
You know.
I mean, these concepts of love and choice, I mean, these serve as the ultimate tools for personal and spiritual transformation. I mean, the two books together both bring something very unique. Bill, your intention in sharing the wisdom that you have is to change our world forever. What is the most actionable piece of advice you can give to an everyday reader to make a positive difference in their life and their community?
So, Gary, what the average person can do is give more love and kindness and service when they can. I mean, if you see something, a tragic thing happen, I mean, at least try to do something. Or call for help, or if you have the capability of physical helping yourself, help. I still do. I mean, I'm older now, but I'll jump down and get on the ground doing just last year, I jumped at the water park. I jumped on the ground because the guy was having a seizure. And people were saying to me, "Why did you do that at the end?" Well, I had to do it because he was biting off his tongue, and I know what to do. We have to change the current direction we're in because if we stay on this line of thinking, I mean, look at the wars that are going on now. these things I saw in the Hall of Events 30 years ago. I seen devastation of whole cities being destroyed. We have to stop killing each other in the world. I know the everyday person can't think about being capable of being able to do that, but hopefully our leaders can, and hopefully we could get to a point where at least we agree on a lot, where it doesn't wind up taking millions and millions and millions of lives for no reason at all. Humanity, we're here for a reason. We're physically here to physically learn and build our spirits. And our spirits grow through enlightenment, through a series of choices we make throughout our lifetime. So as we make these choices, when they're in the path of the light, our spirits are physically growing because we physically choose to be here just for that learning period. On the other side, it's like you walked in the door and out the door. You come in and you come out. I mean, it could be 80 years here, but for you on the other side, you wasn't away from your spirit family that long. So get to know this. The people on the other side, I want them to know one thing that's very important too. If you have someone in your family, you hear this a lot where people are passing away, they see their wife that passed away years ago, or they see their son that passed away, or they see someone close to them that passed away that comes to them and they say they see them. Don't say they're not there, because for them, they physically are seeing them. I told you, an angel comes to get you, and sometimes they'll make it easy for you. They'll appear for you to be prior to your death. And that happens so many times when people are dying today. Because once you cross over, it's automatic. It's no suffering. There's no pain on the other side. It's just life, and everything is wonderful.
I feel the taping of this is very relevant for today. And we're talking about wars across the world or possibly finding some peace. I hope that becomes the case. And you've been featured in 2 documentary films. You have millions of views on various podcasts. The future looks great for your story. We're talking about a screenplay in the works. Great story. Thank you so much for sharing. Viewers, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen. What you're going to see is his website. On the website, where you can learn more about his near-death experience. You can also find both of his books right there on Amazon in both paperback and digital download. I mean, read the great reviews on his website and sign up for his newsletter to keep up to date on his next interview or possibly the screenplay going into movie coming in the future. Once again, that is the 9th level of enlightenment, the wisdom of the light. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV. And if you don't know, now you know.